Hello and welcome back. I'm working on an S550 Mustang, and now I'm pretty much greasing up the back end and any of the rubber bushings, mounts, or anything like that. I'm going to be putting on this spray made by Liquid Wrench. Like I said, it's a silicone-based spray not made with petroleum, so that's not what you want to use. Do not use WD-40 on your rubber, as it does have a counteractive effect on certain rubbers. So I use this waterproof silicone spray, which is rated for RVs or anything like that. It can go on wood, it can go on vinyl, it can go on rubber, it can go on almost anything metal, and it'll pretty much create a waterproof seal and lubricate it so that it'll cause any of the squeaks and stuff like that to disappear, especially if your suspension's a little dried out or even has some high mileage on it and you're just trying to extend those bushings. Now, I don't have high mileage on my car, but it is a 2015 Mustang coming close to almost 10 years old. Part of my routine maintenance is lubricating and making sure everything has somewhat of a dry layer or a silicone spray on it to make sure that you can kind of keep some of the corrosion or things down on your vehicle to try and keep it to the best of conditions that you can. Now, I live in the Northeast, so I do get salt sprayed on my vehicles underneath while I drive in the wintertime, so I have to fight the corrosion with that too. So with this spray, it will help a little bit, but this isn't a corrosion-based spray. It's more of a lubricating spray or to keep your rubber seals protected from the UV, heat, and everything else like that. They make a lot of other products out there, like cavity wax that you could spray inside your rocker panels or in your doors and stuff like that for protection against salt, but that's a different type of video. This is just to lubricate things. I do have upgraded BMR tow rods and lockouts on my IRS system in the back, so you do have to lubricate those, periodically, every few months, but maybe at least once a year to make sure you can keep the squeaks down because they're solid. Now, you don't have to use this brand by Liquid Wrench. You can also use the WD-40. That is a silicone-based spray, not the traditional WD-40. That way, you can spray everything down, even down to your, the shock mounts like this, where there's a little bit of rubber on the bottom of it. Keep that rubber in a good condition. And, don't be too worried about overspray. Just don't get it on anything like your brakes or your rotors and stuff like that, because you can wipe it away with a degreaser if you need to. What you're going to want to do is pretty much spray anywhere that you see a rubber bushing or somewhere where these parts will connect. You'll have a lot of little individual parts that move on this car. You could spray the bolts in between there. Just pretty much get anything that you think will need a little bit of silicone spray if it's getting a little dry from sitting or driving through the winter time and stuff like that. As it's summertime now, this is something I like to implement in this time of year and in the end of the fall, so I don't have to get underneath during the winter time when it's too cold. Now, everything that you coated on the driver's side with this silicone spray, you're going to do the same on the passenger side, including the sway bar links, the control arm bushings, the pads that are on the bottom and the top of the coil springs, anything that you can think of that needs to be coated on this car, you're going to be spraying. The toe links, the cradle lockouts, anything you want covered with a little bit of silicone spray. That way it has a layer of protection. And once all that is done, if you want some extra protection on those toe links, if you upgrade to BMR, Steeda, or anything else like that that's not a factory setting, as most of my suspension parts are still factory, even down to the shocks. As you can see here, I crawl down and I make sure I got everything again. I spray it over this side one more time, making sure I got those toe links. But like I said, I'm going to show you that if you need a heavier grease, there's another way that you can do that and apply it, and that way you're still protected longer than this silicone spray. Because silicone spray does wear off eventually with water and driving and everything else like that, but it will last a very good amount of time, and it'll keep everything lubricated and protected from UV and drying out from the heat, especially as it's underneath the car with constant abuse from rocks flying up, dirt, and everything else like that. Anything that you can do to preserve and keep those bushings, ball joints, everything else on your car, front and back, preserved, I would recommend it because that's some money that you can save on labor and buying those parts again. Because I don't really recommend using too many aftermarket parts on important things, especially your suspension. You want to make sure that those ball joints are name brand or at least a reputable company. I recommend checking out Rock Auto before you order anything. I'm not sponsored by them, but personally, I always like to check on that website before I order anywhere, even locally, as I do know that the local prices are almost double, if not triple, the price of online. This is what I do. Like I said, you can see some OEM parts that they sell on Rock Auto, and if they don't sell it or you don't feel comfortable with the product that they're selling, you can always order from the store at that point. Now you don't have to worry about putting on too much or too little. I rather put too much on and let it drip off, and then I wipe it off with my rag. That way I do know I have a layer of protection of film on there of the silicone. Now I'll keep it on there for at least a few washes, if not a couple months if it's not raining that hard, because I don't really rinse off the underneath of my car too often. That way it's still protected with this on there. And if you still need a heavier grease, there are better products out there. This is just what I like to do to keep those parts rejuvenated. If you have a little squeak or something like that, this will also keep it away, or stuff like that on a car with higher mileage or just of age. This is something that you can do to help see if you can keep them around a little longer. And if you still have a problem, then you definitely have a bearing going bad or a bushing or something else that's causing your squeak. Now, this last step is for someone if they have upgraded tow rods, especially from BMR. You can use a heavier grease from your grease gun. No, there is no grease nipples, so you're going to have to put on a glove and rub it around there in that joint. You can also hit it with a wire wheel if it is heavily oxidized. Mine just had a little bit of surface rust, so I took, the chance without, wire brushing it off, and I put the grease on there because I put the penetrating oil that eats away rust, and then I put on the grease on there, what you just saw, which is a heavy duty grease that will make sure that it'll eliminate the last little bit of stuff. Alright, now it's time for the best part. Lower the vehicle down, take your supports out, use that jack to lower your vehicle down nice and slow. And remember to like and subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet. It's time to hit the road and see if this vehicle is all squeak free again. Because before this, it had a little slight squeak from the tow rod links. Now, after driving it for about 15 minutes, I noticed that there's no more squeaks, no nothing, and this is what you have to do to make sure your aftermarket suspension system is greased up and you don't have to pull it apart.